webinar, and I'll hand it over to Howard and Dan. Thank you all.
All right, great. So Dan, whilst you're busy loading up, I'd just like to do an introduction to all of the people. So I wanted to actually just, if you wouldn't mind raising your hand, I'd love to see how many of you have actually used the conform dimensions from DQ methods. I have to give Dan credit in terms of when I saw the first conform dimensions in the DMBlock 2, it made a lot of sense to me. I loved the idea of the concept. And then, unfortunately, in the revised edition, some reason it disappeared, which I didn't understand why, because I really liked it, but I liked enjoying it. So, but if you could wouldn't mind raising your hands, how many of you have actually gone onto DQ matters, conform dimensions? How many have made use of the functionality? And I think it's been going for quite a long time. Quite a few years we've been running the survey. Great. So we have two people. Would anyone like to comment on some of the value or the benefits that they see out of this conform dimension? I rave about it, and I always quiz my people on the CMP data quality course about those concepts. Anyone have a comment on it?
I would. Thank you, man.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's to get conformance on those. So to get everyone to agree on the same metrics, the same whatever dimensions is placed on it within the enterprise, so that you measure the same stuff across the board. Some people it's tricky with the DQ metrics. Some people see it as this or that, or timing or accuracy or compliance or completeness. So yeah, that was my experience.
Thank you. And I think, Edmund, thanks. It's so good to see you again. And I think you actually answered two of my questions, because my next question was, why is the standard framework for data quality still needed? I know Dan's going to go into this, but I think you answered both of them at the same time. And I guess lots of us have very different ideas of what these dimensions mean. And it's really nice to go through the conform dimensions. And I think that's what it's all about. I think the new book there is about creating an open source version of it, creating a data model that shows you how to apply it, creating a monitoring system that allows you to record all the data quality assessments that you do. And so I think Dan's done a fantastic job. And really, just at the end, what we will really ask you all the way is that we'd like to set up some training for people within the data quality area that are really focused on building and specializing in data quality. When we thought of a 2-day CDMP data quality and then a 3-day DQ matters data quality, which is very practical, very engaging. And I think on the Friday, we were thinking of actually, if you bring your own data, then we could look at some of that as well. Then I hope I'm not taking up too much of your time on the screen, but we need comments from your side soon.
Well, it's exactly like you say. It's been a long time coming. Actually, I had done my original work on proposing the conform dimensions in 2013 and formalized that release on the website in 2016. And we've been doing the survey for 10 years. It's quite amazing. Now we haven't actually collected responses every year for the 10 years. There's been some, 2 or 3 year gaps, just because of the survey fatigue. But if you guys haven't read the results of the survey, dimensions of data quality survey that I do, check out my website. And the last one was in 2024. And we'll probably be doing the next one, 2026, in a couple of months, close to the time that the book comes out. And we'll be focusing this time around on AI, the impact of AI on data quality and data quality on AI as in terms of the question focus. So that should be good.
Sounds great, and we hope that everybody responds. I suppose what we could do is just share it with this group and release that survey just to announce it to the people that they can respond. We've actually got a message from Audrey on the chat saying that really just use the 3 dimensions, validity, completeness, and timeliness. So I know you're going to get to that on one of your slides, so we can discuss it then.
Yep. All in the plan.
All yours, Dan.
Okay. So, yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to go to the next, can do this right. The next slide. Here's a bio. It's kind of helpful for the recording. I won't spend as much time on it today, but I'm the principal founder of DQ Matters, Data Quality Matters. We focus mostly on data strategy, training, and consulting. And I think I'm most well known for the data quality aspect. Obviously, I sit on the DAMA committee that's rewriting the DMBOK. And so I'm well versed in all of the knowledge areas and this one of the greatest things about that opportunity and that exercise that we're doing is the kind of the cross-functional or interaction between the knowledge areas, which is a big component that the committee is working on right now to make sure that the new CDMP extends and goes beyond the wealth of knowledge of the prior CDMP in order to make it understood where does data governance fit into all the other knowledge areas and where does data quality come into play and so forth and so on. Yeah, like Howard I had already mentioned, we're trying to put together a data quality class. So please, I can't emphasize it enough. If you can reach out to Debbie or us in the chat, either publicly or obviously publicly is more appreciated because then everyone sees that you're interested. But even privately, reach out to Debbie and let us know when, whether or not you'd be open to the training and if there are any specific training needs. Because the great thing is that it's not, it's not one size fits all. We can customize it a bit, especially if you're bringing us on site to your organization. With that, let me go to the next slide. I'm going to go over through the agenda here, and probably, hopefully we get through all of the content. If you have any follow-up questions, let me know, or maybe we'll do as we get closer to the book launch, we'll do another session. So basically, I think it's really helpful to those people that have never heard about the conform dimensions. Or maybe that just want to brush up on what are the dimensions of data quality, kind of hit that first, and then why the book is coming into the picture now. Like, what does the book add to the conform dimensions framework, and then connecting that with some of the practical offerings that DQ Matters is rolling out with. And one of those, I really hope that going forward, with Howard's work with Modelware, I'm hoping that you guys will be able to also use the ABC company data model, which is a fictitious or hypothetical company with actual data in it, so that you can do profiling and data model reviews and actual hands-on kind of SQL in order to understand what data quality issues look like in the real world. I think this kind of hands-on training is really effective when trying to prepare somebody for something or level up. So a lot of times you'll be in a role and conduct a certain number of tasks in your professional life, but if you want to get to the next level or you want to broaden your horizons and add data quality to your CDMP profile, then that's a great way to do it. And then we'll also be kind of talking on the open data quality repository. So with that, I just want to save all the time I can, so I'm going to jump right in here. what are the dimensions of data quality? So I think it's important for, we're data people. We need definitions, we need metadata, and the conformed dimensions of data quality are categories used to characterize data and its fitness for use. And for non-data people, I just like to use the word categories. From an academic perspective, within the literature out there, there are also further groupings of the dimensions of data quality into categories, which I cover in the book, comparison of the leading authors' groupings of the dimensions of data quality. So, be careful with how you use the word categories. It can mean different things to different people. But typically, we would say that I think mostly everyone says that the dimensions of data quality are characteristics of the data. And application that can be applied in any industry to assess, measure, track, and communicate information and quality. And I think that's what I think it's Edwin Wright was saying, how he liked the fact that it's really good for measuring and comparison. And I think there has been some misunderstanding. A lot of times people say, well, no, the dimensions of data quality need to be specific to an industry. So originally, when I put forth my proposal for the conformed dimensions, a lot of people said, no, this is too generic. I need it for healthcare. I need it for supply chain management. And I found that to not be the case, because data, the characteristics are about the data, not about the business topics. Now, what does happen though is that the dashboard and the context for which you're reporting the data quality is very domain specific. So this is the challenge. We'll see a lot of vendors on LinkedIn, poo-pooing or, talking down the value of the dimensions in data quality. And you need to be careful to take that with a grain of salt. Usually that stems from the incorrect or the over usage of the dimensions of data quality. When people go looking for data quality problems purely and only through the lens of the dimensions of data quality. And as we know, as data practitioners, data quality is much more about business processes that lead to the creation of poor data quality, not the data quality in it of itself. That's only one aspect of it. So it's a multifaceted, the data quality problem is a multifaceted, multidimensional issue that requires us to take different approaches. And that's why I actually love data quality the most in the other areas of other knowledge areas within the DMBOK. These are some of the value adds here at the bottom of those. I think we've kind of got through that. Let me get to the problem statement, and this is a different version of this diagram as what was in the DMBOK 2, transposed into a vertical version. But Laura Sebastian Coleman liked this one, and she was the one that was integral into providing that in the DMBOK 2, because what it really illustrates is that the lack of agreement on what I call the underlying concepts or the meaning when you say integrity or validity. So if you look here, what I did, and this was really started out from just my notes in my study for the IQCP.
1 moment.
Do you have your hand up?
No, yeah, I've got my hand up, but I'll wait for you to finish the slide.
Oh, okay. So yeah, this started out when I was studying for the IQCP, the Information Quality Certified Professional, which was by an organization that no longer exists, but it's something similar to DAMA, but with a much more focused emphasis on data quality and information quality. And I just, I was reading all the books, all the authors on the dimensions of data quality, and I just got so confused because different people would say different things. And it gets much worse when you go to a conference and you walk into one classroom and you hear this, and then you walk into another classroom and you hear that. So I just started listing them out across the top of the page. And then I put down, the key concepts underneath them that, was what I was hearing. So like for integrity there, we have a unique ID of an entity, cardinality, referential integrity. These are the things that I was, reading about or hearing. But then other times I would hear things like a domain of values as part of integrity. Or with regards to accuracy, they would say domain of values is included in accuracy, in addition to match to the agreed source or agree with the real world. So what I did was, look at which lines, which meaning that people grouped into other things maybe didn't belong. So this is my kind of like back of the napkin sort of method of trying to align things between these. I'm done with this slide. Howard, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah. I really liked this mapping and the red lines, and I think in the VM box we actually had some other lines. And what I wanted to ask you was, if we look at integrity and referential integrity and then linking it to the domain of values is almost the same thing in terms of I can have a reference data table, and I would have a foreign key to say you have to be one of these values. When you get to defining the data quality rules, is it possible that I could have domain values under the integrity dimension, or you would say they're related, but you shouldn't mix that? You want to keep them all with those that are part of that one column, that one dimension.
So I think this is important. And in my book, I talk about the clusters of the dimensions of data quality and how there's some sort of overlap or relationship between them. And I don't think for certain situations there are things when things have this where you may want to tag a data. So how do we use this? Let's be really practical. So usually you'll have like some sort of a data quality or other IT system where you have tickets, you log data quality problems. So when you log the problem, you need to log it according to the dimension of data quality in order to add additional metadata and categorization of your issues. And so in that scenario, sometimes the question comes, how many dimensions of data quality can apply to one data quality problem? So you can look at it from different views. And so you could have an angle that comes at it from integrity or another one that comes at it from a validity perspective. So I do think that there is some value in doing it that way. To answer your question really specifically, I think the problem is that we have technologies these days, and I think it was like Salesforce and different other ones where a pick list of data, which restricts the domain of values, can exist in a table by itself. We don't model that separately as we did in an entity relationship sort of diagram when you have third normal form and you're normalizing the data. So in that sense, the referential integrity wouldn't apply even though it's a pick list. Does that make sense, Howard? Why would we keep them separate? At the end of the day, the referential integrity is the methodology that we enforce validity. So referential integrity is the mechanism we use to enforce it, the integrity, but the activity is a validity activity or validating that the data can only be what it is.
And this open source data model you have, when these type of things would be stored, I'm assuming you now can restrict a concept and a dimension in terms of the cardinality, restricted to a single concept per dimension, or is it possible to have multiple? How do you show the relationship? But we can talk about that later.
Yeah, I think that really deserves a deep dive on the open data quality repository.
Okay.
So what, how did I come up with this, right? And I think so either there's two camps out there. Some people say that the conform dimensions are too academic, meaning that it's too conceptual, and then there's other people that say, it's just Dan Meyer's opinion. And so it's important to understand that I went through, and in the book, I used these 6 authors, Larry English, Tom Redwin. The original at the time when I did the work was the Bach 1. TDWI's take on things, David Lotion and Lee Pepino, Funk and Wang. So this is Professor Wang at the University of MIT. Well, it's MIT and UALR. And their original paper, Wang and Strong's Dimensions of Data Quality article that they had originally published. And then, a subset of that would be, of course, Jeanette McGilvery has a take on the dimensions of data quality. And I spent a lot of time early in my journey with Jeanette and Tom, vetting it out. One of the papers that I wrote for IQ Journal, the IQCP, was a mapping of the ISO dimensions of data quality. So if you're in manufacturing or supply chain and you need the ISO, accreditation, I definitely think you should move forward with the use of that. But this paper outlines some of the pros and cons and things that you can still gain in value by adding additional dimension and aspects from the conform dimensions. And in there, I think it makes a strong case for the level of maturity of the conform dimensions as opposed to other options. So when I think about the dimensions of data quality and data quality measurement, I want to be more on the objective side than the subjective side. So a lot of times dimensions of data quality are pretty much meaningless, and meaningless because there's no definition at all, or it's subjective and there's no way to make. The more subjective it is, the harder it is to measure it, right? So we want it to be objective. The most desirable is inherent, and this metric can be measured through statistical or logical observations just of the data itself. So you don't need additional context. The data model itself provides enough context to evaluate the most desirable and this inherent level. The next is, and I'll give examples at the bottom here, don't worry. The next is testable, meaning you need some actual additional information in order to conduct the test on it. And lastly, subjective, which requires some sort of a human input that's difficult or impossible to automate. And so let's go into some examples. So like if I look at completeness, for instance, of data within a table. Now these examples are relational data, relational context. So, please use that when you take that into account. But the attribute population, there's structure built there to hold it, the data value. So it sort of implies and that there is supposed to be a value there. Obviously, we have nullability, meaning that a column can be null or required. And so we may model it intentionally saying, no, this will be null in this situation. But because of the fact that there's structure there in the model, then we would say that this is an inherent data. I consider that inherent data quality. And it's the most desirable because if you send me a file, I can load it up and I can profile it and understand its completeness without any additional sort of metadata or testability. That's different than record population, right? So record population, meaning if Howard sent me a data set and I loaded it up, I wouldn't really know if that was everything. If he sent me the cities in the world, list of cities in the world, well, I don't know if he sent me 30,000 or 20,000. I wouldn't know, unless you tell me what's the denominator, what's the total set. I wouldn't know if I have the complete set. Truncation is the same, and where we get like a numeric value may be truncated down, or even a sentence could be truncated to a simple word. But if it still sort of makes sense, if but it's wrong, it has to be tested. You have to have the original value, the correct value, in order to compare against it. And then subjective is reasonability. So reasonability, how do you do that? So, and these other two on the left, from completeness, these are in the conform dimensions. Reasonability is not, because it has many different factors. So you could think of it as reasonability as more of a composite dimension, meaning a dimension of dimensions. So like consistent, or it meets rational expectations, temporal reasonability. These are some of the things that authors cited with regards to that. Okay, I'm going to move to the next question because we're probably a little bit behind. So one of the principles of the conform dimension is really to have an objective focus, providing a standard language that really provides you the ability to have quantifiable measures of data quality. And it needs to be independent of a system, because data, especially now, cloud context, as well as with AI, data is more and more portable. And so the data quality needs to apply and be usable irrespective of where it's stored. So that is the primary distinction. There are other distinctions within the conform dimensions in ISO 25012. But in that paper that I wrote, you'll see that efficiency, portability, and recoverability are typically system related and therefore not included in the conform dimensions. The power of the conform dimensions framework. So the conform dimensions, and I think this is the part that Howard's told me multiple times, what he really appreciates is having a higher level conceptual thing called a dimension, and then these underlying concepts, as I talked about in the prior slide, the key concepts underneath. And then the metrics are the way that we measure, and typically we'll measure one for one, but we have the flexibility to create as many more metrics than we do underlying concepts. So as you'll see in the next this first box, simple but powerful, there's 11 dimensions that I came up with. And that's how you know that something was done scientifically versus by a human, is if the number is not round, it's 11. So a lot of people ask me, why not just make it 10? And I said, well, the research didn't tell me to make it 10. I did the research, and the data that I finally came up with was exactly 11 and 37. Anyway, so the underlying concepts, there's 37 of those. But that doesn't mean there's only 37 metrics. So metrics are the way that you instantiate your measurement of that underlying concept. You can do it. There are many more of those. And that's what's great about the open data quality model, is that it gives you a full entity relationship diagram of how to associate the metrics with data quality rules, and then a pick list or a list of values of all of the out-of-the-box metrics. So there's about like 72, so 2x of the 37. So that anyway, I'll talk about that in a later slide. So the comprehensive, and it's tested, right? So one of the things that I say, and it's a little bit of a boasting, but I would say that the conform dimension is academically robust, cited, and more advanced than some of the other dimensions of data quality so far. Because of the fact they have the underlying concepts, this hierarchical thing, and therefore more atomic, and has complete descriptions. And if you have something, even if the standard isn't perfect, but if you have a standard, then you can start comparing between day over day. You can compare against departments. You can say this department has this higher level of quality based on this level of the way that we compare data quality. You can say this company has better data quality than this company. And you can even say in general, this industry. So, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when I go to see the doctor, I have this belief that he and the rest of the medical community is more devoted to the quality of care than, and I have to be careful here because I don't want to throw any other industry under the bus here. But let me just say, I don't know, gambling industry. Whatever industry it is, I hope that my doctor is better and pays more attention to the quality of things, because my life's on the line. Okay, so the
Sorry,
components
Dan.
of data quality.
Sorry, Dan.
Yeah.
Just a really good observation on the previous slide. Lots of people say, oh, but the DM box says these are the 6 or however many dimensions. And I think that where people misread that is that was just something that was published by DAME UK. It doesn't mean that those are the dimensions. So lots of people misunderstand that and say, well, the DM box dictates those X number of dimensions, but that's not the case.
Yeah, and I went to the Neon Block at the beginning of my journey and found paragraphs and paragraphs describing one dimension. And that's not a way to educate people by using a paragraph to describe a dimension. You need succinct, measurable, comparable articulation. And even though Howard and I both are on the committee, it doesn't mean that the dimensions of data quality in the DMBOK3 are going to look like the conformed dimensions necessarily, because that's not the way it works. We're a very consensus-based decision-making body. So even though I may have a personal view on how to structure the dimensions of data quality, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden Dan's version of the conformed dimensions become the DMBOK. I do, however, would like to say that I want to. We'll be working on the data quality chapter, and I can guarantee you that it's going to be a lot cleaner, meaning the definition will be more concise and atomic. But it doesn't mean it's going to look like the conformed dimensions, because that's not the way we work. Yeah, so there was a question out there. Should DQ metrics be universally comparable? And my answer is as close to that as possible. We're human, right? And we have different ways of communicating. The conformed dimensions of data quality at the end of the day is a communication tool to articulate what are your requirements. And then once you've given your requirements, when you build a system, that system needs to meet those level of data quality requirements. So if you want your system to do exactly what your requirements say, then yes, they need to be standard and to the best capable way that universally, that being universal is the best for transferability, meaning comparison to the industry. So if I was a hospital and I had data and I wanted to compare my data quality to another hospital, wouldn't it need to be universal? So therefore, the dimensions of data quality need to be universal. Okay.
Okay, Audrey did make a comment there, and I'm not sure, we can pick it up later, Dan, but just reminding you, there's a comment from Audrey about the difficulties across different types of data.
And I think Audrey and I would have a blast when I think, Howard, we're going to have to have a deep dive on the open data quality model, because the open data quality model really puts the conformed dimensions into a bucket and shows you how to standardize it.
Fantastic. So we'll get Debbie to set up a deep dive.
So the next slide is components of data quality, and I think it's important that people understand what are the primary tools or levers that we have when we're looking at data quality. So you have raw data coming into the organization, or that you're monitoring on the front end, and you're looking at preventing poor data quality at the beginning. And that data is compared to some data quality rules. And the rules themselves can be written by plain English. So you could just go out there and write some pseudocode, and then a programmer could write up a rule. The problem is that really what you need is a language, as I just mentioned, this language, how to articulate what you want. So the conformed dimensions of data quality are as basic and atomic as possible, so that you learn these building blocks. Hence the diagram has the blocks there, the underlying concepts of the blocks, and then you assemble those to build a wall. So your wall of data quality is composed of underlying concepts that create these standard metrics. And those metrics then assembled in a certain way, certain context, is what you use to create data quality rules. So as you know, you can have, it's kind of back to what we talked about, the composite aspect of a dimension of data quality. You can have different metrics. You can say, I want completeness and consistency. So I want to make sure all my data is there, but then I also want to make sure it syncs up with my other system. So I'm going to take completeness metric and a consistency metric, and then I'll create a data quality rule on top of that. So that's what I'm trying to illustrate here, is that the rule is composed of one or more metrics, right? And then you evaluate those to have an output metric. So your output metric is, what was the evaluation? Am I 30% on completeness and 80% on consistency? And that is then reported in my open data quality repository. Now, of course, it could be in any tool, and you can model it yourself, but that's why I have this kind of database thing in the right-hand corner there. So in my book.
And sorry, Dan, just to work on that, I know that Dale Rutherford as well has just published a grouping which he calls an ensemble. Is that similar to this grouping that you're referring? Is that a similar terminology or slightly different?
I would have to read into it. I'm not familiar with his context, so I don't want to answer for him unless I read more on it. So what I do in the book, so this is the challenge that we've had in the past, is that even though people, that maybe have a further insight and understanding, like Howard or somebody very senior, they can look at the conform dimensions and say, oh, I know how to apply that because it makes sense based on my experience. Other people have looked at it and said, even the conform dimensions are too abstract. I don't know how to apply it. So the purpose of the book is to actually, it's kind of a manifesto of sorts, to say this is how you apply what is a conceptual thing. And so you have throughout the book, I cover each of the dimensions of data quality and the conform dimensions in every single underlying concept. So all 37 have examples with a data quality rule and then some associated metrics. So for instance, the comparison of source to target might be the data quality rule that I create. And this measures whether all the rows in the source were transferred to the target. So, as a bare minimum, as examples of metrics that can be used for this from a underlying concept perspective is row counts matched to source. So that's one of the underlying concepts within completeness. And then percent row counts matched to source is just the percentage version. So one is a literal count and one is the percentage of the total. And then the metric formula is there. So this is just an example of what I do in the book is I put two metrics for every single underlying concept. So that's why you have the 37 could be multiplied by 2. Edwin, do you have a question?
Just quickly, it's a problem that we ran into, now that you mentioned count of rows. So typically we counted failures and passes. And then we ran into a problem where, two problems. The one is to count the success or the pass. Sometimes is to record it. It's big, you count millions and millions of rows versus the 2 failures, but you needed to do a percentage formula. And the other problem is, in some cases, we only then started to record failures for whatever reason. So what's the guideline on that?
I think it really warrants a more further, a deeper dive into that, Edwin. So sure. I think that the simple answer to me is when to use a metric versus when to use a count versus a percentage is I think the high level question, and that is I use a count when the numbers are small, or there's some sort of materiality. So there's a difference. So if I told somebody it's only 1%, okay, but is 1% $1 million, or is 1% $1? So you need to look at materiality in order to evaluate, and that's why you need both. The system needs to calculate both, whether or not you use it for your report to your boss, or the way you communicate it to the stakeholders. That's a different thing. So I know you're like chomping at the bit. Just show me the conformed dimensions already. And so here they are. These are the 11 and the hierarchical relationship that we have here. I'm really behind on time, so I'm going to kind of jump on this one to what does this look like with AI? And I will have to tell you guys, I'm not an AI guru, although you could say that I wrote the book on data quality. I didn't write the book on AI. And I think we're all struggling especially because the models are actually changing themselves, increasingly more stronger and able to handle different scenarios. But some of the things that categories I sort of took a stab at here, and Howard, I'm sure you and I could go back and forth on this for longer than we have here. But some of the categories or areas where it seems to be less important. So one of the great things about AI is the ability to look at data as a whole. I think one of the big assumptions with AI is that you're looking at a lot of data. So AI works well when you have a lot of data and it can sort of learn and do some pattern analysis. It's way better than humans in terms of pattern analysis on large sets of data. So where data quality is maybe less important is if you have completeness, you're missing a row or you're missing a column in one fact, one row, as opposed to millions of rows, and therefore I can extrapolate, I can kind of look at the bigger picture of things. So any of these things like consistency seems to be less important, because to the extent that the tool has access to other data to triangulate on what is probably the most accurate. So we see consistency sometimes going down because it looks at bigger picture. You have a lot of data going into there. Validity, I mean, it to the extent that your LLM can scrape and understand the domain of what you're talking about, it can create a set of permissible values and then compare the data against that, computationally. So it seems to be less important. What I would basically say, and I know you guys are going to throw in some rocks and tomatoes at this idea, some of the more same or more important, from what I understand from the reading that I've done so far, is existence. The tool can't know what's the bigger picture, the tree from the forest. It doesn't know. You could show it a tree, you could show it a portion of the forest, but it doesn't know that there's other planets outside of the forest on Earth. Its boundaries are determined by what it's learned to date. So if you tell it something new, then it can't accommodate that, meaning it will start to hallucinate and tell you things that you think it thinks you want to know, as opposed to what it actually knows. And it won't even tell you that it doesn't know that a lot of times. So, and the other one is agree with the real world. To the extent that it doesn't have tools, data that sense on the fly. So if you had a robot, so we think of kind of the US being leaders in large language models and AI from that context. And then it seems that China, earlier in the days, was Japan on robot design and autonomous robots. That those would require sensors like eyes or ears or touch, things that allow them to interact with the real world. So to the extent that the LLM is able to have direct environmental measurements, then agree with the real world may not be as much of a problem. But without that, in the case of say an LLM, then you don't have that improvement. So match to agreed source seems to be unchanged. So to the extent that it knows what the source should be, that's unchanged, which is something that we already have in data quality and we know as data quality practitioners. And hopefully, I've seen different things that say LLMs don't care about access control and retention, which throws out security altogether and privacy altogether, because security and privacy are more important in an AI world, so that way you're able to set boundaries for your bot to say, you know, I want you to look at this scope, but nothing more. And you need to have controls that prevent access and or have retention rules that are the same for your bots AI as it is for humans. So I would say that's unchanged. The last one is to be determined, and the parts where I'm currently in my research and you know my own work with clients is, you know, timeliness, manual float and electronic float. So manual float is how quickly you make this change in the system. Electronic float is how fast it replicates across the system. So, but at the end of the day, availability, I think people think, well, you know, LLM is always growing and improving, it's scraping the internet all the time, but it may not, regardless of that, it may not have the information you need at a certain point in time. So it may not be timely, which is still, you know, something that needs to be figured out how that timing works. And the same with currency and metadata availability. Metadata availability, I think, is a real challenge because a lot of times we feel like the AI doesn't need metadata because it can sort of scrape from different contexts and other sources to figure out the context. But I find that not to be the case. If you've ever done prompt engineering, the more information that you can tell the AI up front and parameters, that context, which is typically metadata, the more valuable the answer is that comes out of it. So I think that one is still kind of up in the air. There may be things that change. How are we going to do? We're already at the hour. I'm like a third of the way through.
Right. I was just wondering about that. Maybe we do it quickly for those of you that are there and would love to get your feedback. So Debbie, if we could just do it quickly and then Dan can move on. I think Dan, sometimes we do go to past, where people will hang in there to see all of the rest of the slides.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So Debs, would you like to do that quickly?
Yes, sure. So if you would like to partake in this raffle, please raise your hand. And then once everyone's hand's raised, I will ask Dan to pick a number. And then once he picks the number, please can you keep your hand raised? Just so we
otherwise the
can,
numbers change.
numbers change and we need to have the correct winner. So right now we're on 18, 19, 20. I believe that's, excuse me, 23. Okay, anyone else?
Still growing verbs, maybe 1
Okay,
minute.
I'm going to close this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so 21, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, between 1 and 26, please. Close your eyes.
My number, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
It's 1 in 26. 4.
Number 4. So our lucky winner is Funa. Congratulations, Funa. You have won a free copy of this. Well done. Please could you drop your email in the chat and we'll make sure that you receive your free copy once the book is released. So thank you all for partaking and better luck at our next book launch. And I'm sure we will also share a link to purchase Dan's book once it's released. So we'll definitely help with that as well.
It's on the publisher's website as well now for pre-release it. But I can't tell you, if you're like me, you don't like paying for something that you don't have in hand. So actually what the publisher told me, the way they do it is they put like a $1 placeholder charge on your card to make sure your card is good. And then they actually make the purchase when the book comes out, and then they mail it out to you at that point. And even if I do come to a training in South Africa, and we're really looking forward to doing that in person if possible. It'll be way better if you have the book in hand ahead of time, rather than me having to carry a million books on the plane. So why don't we do this for time, if it's okay with you guys? Why don't we take another 10 minutes? I think it's going to get me to about halfway through the deck.
Okay.
So we'll just, it's no big deal. Let's just reschedule the second half, and go from there. On other days I would be more flexible, but today I have another appointment. So one of my big takeaway with AI and data quality is this idea of it. AI tends to look at it as a trend and very probabilistic, versus Boolean and very deterministic. Deterministic meaning these are the rules and it has to be something, and it's very black and white. And instead, it's more of a gray kind of like, I think this is a close answer. And it very much reminds me, do you guys remember when big data was a big thing, like maybe, I don't know, 8-10 years ago? And that we had something called eventual consistency. There's like the principles of database design have ACID, and ACID was an acronym to describe the level of, it's more detailed than I really want to get into here. But anyway, how up to date and correct your database is, and what do you do in federated database environments. So when we were arguing about that at the time, everyone said, no, my database has to be absolutely correct. The finance guys would say, I can't be wrong on this. This is finance. So I'll get sued if I'm off. And I love that from a healthcare perspective. I want my doctor to be absolutely correct. Then there were other people, especially here in the Bay Area, in San Francisco Bay Area and Silicon Valley. They said, it doesn't really matter if I'm close. And then eventually, within a minute, within 3 minutes, within an hour, it's finally up to date and correct. Then I'm okay with that. I think that's kind of the way that we look at data quality with AI. The question is, can you be mostly correct? And that's the question I have there. Can you be mostly correct, or do you have to be absolutely correct? And for that matter, prove it. You have to have that transparency. Howard, did you have a take on this?
Yeah, I really think it depends on the AI technique. AI is such a big word for so many things, and as you point out, it depends on the technique we're using. Would depend on the type of quality you require on it. But as an example, I'm sure Dale could talk to that toxicity on an LLM response. That's the type of thing you want to actually check before it even goes back to the user. So those are different things, different importance.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to briefly cover what's in the book, because we don't have the book in hand yet. I've already submitted everything to the publisher, and the ball's in their court. They're doing all the hard work of cleaning up the layout. But some of the things that what I cover in the book is why is data quality and the dimensions are important. So, I mean, you wouldn't want to buy a data quality book and not learn examples of why data quality is important. So at the heart of it, the book is about communicating data quality and understanding it in your own life, not just at work. Like this applies to the bills we get for our cell phone, or the way that I work with my bank. It applies to, a trust when I have a family member that passes away. It applies to, just other things in our real day-to-day lives. Some of the things that you learn in data quality can be applied anywhere. The industry alignment on the dimensions of data quality is super important. And just give me 5 minutes. And the other one is the programs that support data quality. So, Howard and I are both, in the DM Bach recreation right now. And so in my book, chapter 4, it talks about how does data quality rely on those other knowledge areas, and vice versa. How do those other knowledge areas fall apart when you don't have good data quality? Section 2 of the book talks about measuring with the dimensions of data quality. So it goes through all 11 dimensions, all 37 underlying concepts with rigor for each of the underlying concepts, explaining what they mean, so that you as an analyst, when you collect data quality requirements, the assumption is that you're going to be communicating with some business user and say, what do you need the data to do? Okay, if you needed to do that, then these are the most applicable dimensions of data quality. It's about communication of the requirements and then comparison and monitoring and measuring. Then what we do is because I needed a way, this is one of the other reasons why I created the Open Data Quality Repository and the ABC Company data model, is that I needed examples in the book that were tangible. And I wanted them to be physically something that you can query, that you can see in a spreadsheet or a database that you can query. Section 3 has data quality improvement techniques, and these are the ways that you improve data quality. And I will tell you that I didn't include stuff that PhDs write about, and it's not necessarily intentional because I read a lot of technical papers that are very complex, but I wanted this, at least the first edition of this book, to be very practical techniques. And so the techniques provided here aren't rocket science. So you may think, oh, I can go and I can Google or I can look at websites to understand how to do these things. Yes, but it's not as comprehensive as what I do in the book. And what I'm trying to do with the book is create a platform of consistency on techniques, so that way, if you wanted to teach a class, or Howard and I are both educators, we believe strongly in learning. My goal is that in, like, for instance, in the United States, we have community colleges. So these are, 2-year colleges, sometimes before or in conjunction with your university education. My goal is that this book would be the basis of teaching data quality in community colleges. So if you're an educator or you think you want to teach, maybe even at a high school level, you can take this book and teach people about the basics of data quality. Now, there are things in this book that are definitely more advanced, and not everyone's going to understand or care about those things. At the end of each of the chapters on the dimensions of data quality is a section that talks about how I came up with the conform dimensions, meaning what level of agreement there is in the industry for that dimension. And that's a little bit more academic. Like, that's not something that you would typically cover if you were teaching high schoolers or even community college students, but it's there. So the book can really meet you where you're at. The next two things were the actual kind of work products that came along with the book. And that is, to me, the foundation is this ABC Company, this mock corporate data, where I created data in a real quasi-enterprise scenario in order to make the illustrations in the book. It's one thing to put those illustrations in the book and have them static. It's another thing to have an actual relational database with the DDL and the DML, where you can install that database and actually query it and browse the data in a spreadsheet. My goal is to make this book that powerful so that the students have things that they can actually put their hands on and profile and so forth and so on. Now, the thing with the ABC Company is that it won't stay the same over time. We'll probably have to version it off. And as educators start to test on concepts in the ABC Company, we're going to have to change the data in order to, make the answer to the questions different each time on different tests. But with AI, that's super easy. You can create manufactured data using AI super easy and fast. So I don't think that the educators are going to have a trouble keeping this up to date so that their testing is rigorous. All of the examples and the methodologies that are provided in the book, irrespective of the actual values in the database, will be the same. So the data quality teaching approach can be successful. The last is the Open Data Quality Repository, which is a way to consolidate reporting. The problem is that even in the richest, most wealthy companies that I work for, there is hesitancy to spend money on a data profiling tool. you can use free data quality / data profiling tools from the internet. But what happens is those results go into a spreadsheet, a CSV file on somebody's desktop. And so we lack the ability to have this lineage of thought, of consistency of data quality results and monitoring over time. So with the open data quality repository, I offer that with kind of two licensing or two tiers. One is the free for learning, you like in Dana, all members can download the model and use it for learning, but you're not allowed to use that in a corporate context, meaning that you're not allowed to use it for business and work. So if you are, and you notice your employer is using it, but they're not paying DQ Matters, then please let me know. There's rewards for that. But the point is that I get paid for my work and as well as the support that I provide clients through the open data quality repository. Howard, I am just out of time. Unfortunately,
Okay,
this other thing is there.
Thank you very much. I think we'll certainly schedule another one, but thank you so much for it, and really appreciate the work that you're doing. I mean, I really like the idea of data modeling and the repository. I think it's fantastic, and love to hear from others in terms of your view on what Dan's providing. I think Dan would love the feedback.
Why don't we do this for next time? If you, Debbie, do you mind scraping the questions or copy and pasting those into an email to me, and Howard and I can collaborate on answering those virtually. And
sure.
And then whenever we reschedule part 2, we will send these out as a reminder for part 2 to help us get back into the flow for part 2.
Amazing.
Thank you very much. So,
thank you guys. I'm gonna drop.
Cheers, everybody.
Thank you, Dan. Have a good day.
Thanks. Alrighty.